So good morning. Thank you. So first I was told I have to speak very closely to the loudspeakers, otherwise the translators can't hear me. And I think they have the hardest job today, sitting in this small box, following us all the day and translating. So thank you very much for translation, and do a nice translation. When I'm not good in English, make it nice. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's really a pleasure to be here. I was here last year. It was amazing to listen to all the panel participants, also to listen to all the colleagues from industry and to learn, because I think it's always about learning and listening, this kind of events. And thank you very much, Solica. It was fantastic to see. I know what you're doing, because I know all the things with your team, what you're doing in sustainability with United Nations Tourism. Probably it's sometimes underrated what is done in your organization with all the people in the team all the time. And I think it's great for us to see this, to follow the film, your presentation. I think it's an amazing job, and also that it was possible to have sustainability and tourism in the assembly in New York, in the General Assembly. I think that's, well, I would say it's a privilege for our industry that this was possible. The headline for my presentation was given by Dirk. And it's a quite difficult headline, because buzzwords are probably not only happening in the tourism industry. I think this is a little bit part of the media landscape, and you all, well, have your experience with buzzwords, especially when you're working in politics. Yeah, all in politics, they know this. You know this every day. There is one topic, and everything is focused and streamlined on this topic, and then you can't escape, and then it's on us to come with the arguments, and that the arguments are listened. That's also often not so easy. It's much easier that people follow this streamlining buzzword stories than, well, the facts or the arguments. So let me try to say some words what I want to present, and hopefully we have also some charts. Oh, we have the charts, because I arrived this morning at, well, it was nearly 10 o'clock, so it was exactly before the opening of the meeting, and then I learned the charts have been not here, but now they're here. Tourism is an attractive global growth market with strong macro fundamental and growth figures higher than overall GDP. I think this is the fact where we are starting. But this is probably also the topic we want to discuss when we are talking about, on the one hand, the over-tourism, and we should also all not forget, 3 years ago, we talked about another story. We talked about tourism was over for 3 years due to pandemic and Corona, and sometimes we forget this. And we have also seen in places, well, where we have high development, where we have also people with high income, that this was a difficult time. Also, I know from Mallorca, also in Mallorca, there had been places where it was not easy for people to earn money, to get food, etc. And, well, don't forget about other places in the world which are not as rich than Mallorca or Spain. This was a difficult time for all of us. But there are learnings out of these times. And I had the privilege, and I want to say this really, it was a privilege. We learned about the protests on the Canary Islands and on the Balearic Islands on Mallorca. And we had the privilege really to meet with the local environment, with the hotel association, with the unions, with people from the local production companies. So this Forum Civilidad, I think is the right name in Spain, hopefully in Mallorquin. Spain, or okay. So to meet with all the people and to learn from them, because I think we are working in the same environment, so we have probably good interests, and we have all. And I haven't heard from anybody I'm against tourism. When you have been in Germany or probably in France or in the UK, the headlines in the TV shows in the evening was protests against tourists. I haven't heard from anybody that they are against tourists. They wanted to have a more inclusive and, let's say, more sustainable way of tourism. But I also learned, some have said in this group, the decision was made by our parents in the 60s, that our island, that we want to grow with the tourists, with tourism industry, and now we have to bring this to the next level in a sustainable way, so that local neighborhoods and, on the other hand, tourists have a good time together, because the island belongs to the locals. The islands belong to the people from Mallorca, and the people from Mallorca have to make the decision how many tourists they want to have, what kind of tourism, and they have the responsibility at the end whether it works or not. That's not the decision by tourism companies or by governments from other countries. Also, we are also all friends and partners in Europe. Let me have some few words on, let's say, the development in the last, let's say, 5 years. When we look back on the elections, 2019, the EU elections, I would label them as climate elections. There was one focus, this was Greta. You remember Greta Thunberg was at that time. In all media, she was welcomed at all places. I'm not sure whether she was also at the United Nations. Probably she was. She was at the Federal Chancellery in Germany. I believe she was in the White House. She was at all places. And this was probably the framework also for the political discussion of a lot of topics. And sometimes, from my feeling, my impression, it was a little bit too much reduced to one topic, especially in sustainability. When we compare the EU elections from this year and also many national and regional elections, France, Netherlands, Spain, Belgium, it is now more a holistic view on the challenges we do have in Europe and we do have in the world. It's about economic growth, it's about migration, and since the wars have started, it's about security. So we have another approach now, and probably other challenges and also other responsibilities politicians have to tackle, and also the voters and the people who want to get answers from politicians and solutions, probably. The tourism industry, we are operating, as I said, in a different climate today, and some could say, well, we have now so much challenge with the wars, we have to invest much more in security. Is it the right time for sustainability? Do we have to change our agendas? I will say yes, it is the right time for sustainability. It is still the right time for sustainability. And you see also the reason on this slide. Tourism is an attractive global growth market, and with global arrivals, it continues to rise also in the next years. What we should think about, what is the right and the, well, no, I'm not good in clicking, to be honest. No, probably have to do it in the wrong, no? This way, it's this way. I'm not good in using clickers, and I'm not good in using charts, I have to say. But sometimes I try it and sometimes it works. Hopefully today it works. For me, it's a question, what is the operating model of our industry for the future? What is a successful operating model for tourism where we bring together responsibilities, opportunities, and, well, really our challenges we have to tackle? And at TUI, we stopped all these discussions about why. It's only the way, how we do it. What are we doing? How we bring our business to a sustainable business. And as a company with 130 aircraft, 17 cruise ships, 400 hotels, we are deep in the details of decarbonization through innovation, green energy, and sustainable fuels. And this is a topic we have in all meetings with all governments. It's, I would say, prioritized from us in all meetings where we come to the Balearics, to the Canaries, to Spain, but also I was just with the German president to Egypt. It is always on top of our agenda. Also to learn, to be honest, because we see different ways how governments prepare the country and also, well, work on the regulation in the country, because sometimes my learning is we have new times and we try to manage new times with old laws and old regulations and old behaviors, and sometimes it's not too bad to look to the one country or to the other country. Probably you cannot transfer everything, but there is always a good idea behind, and I will come later on this on some areas. More or less, we have all to handle the same. We all want to reduce emissions, incorporate ESG criteria in our processes, in our reportings, and getting out the result of it. But the question is, how can a company like TUI and also other companies create differentiation from the rest and translate for our industry what is expected from us? How can tourism drive the public debate when it comes to sustainability? I call this the operating model of tourism. This is not so much about the individual things we are doing, but more about the approach, how we become part of this bigger discussion we have in politics about all things of sustainability. And as I said before, we are coming from regulation, which is from the past, from policies, which is coming from the past, and we have to find a new balance between economic growth, social progress, environmental protection and its opportunities. And I want to show this chart. I like it very much, and it's not new. Probably some in the room have followed me also in the past, have followed the speech. I always use this chart also in the company to really to underline to everybody what is sustainability, and what is sustainability, how it was defined by the United Nations or by Gro Harlem Brundtland, the former Prime Minister of Norway, when she has done all the work on the Brundtland report. It was end of the 80s, so it's, I'm right, probably 1987, I think, Gro Harlem Brundtland has done this work. I met her in my former times in politics when she was the Norwegian Prime Minister, a very impressive woman, a very impressive leader in her role as a Prime Minister, but also in her role when she moved to the health organization, United Nations Health Organization, and then later when she prepared the Brundtland report for all of us. I think you can see here, we had in the past, when we talked about sustainability, most people talked about the environment, and we have been not in balance with all three dimensions of sustainability, which is economic, social, and environmental. And you can also read this in the report. Well, what Mrs. Brundtland has said, sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability for future generations to meet their own needs. That's the definition of sustainability. I'm personally believing it. That's the way how we developed our sustainability agenda in TUI. And as I said, sometimes it is underestimated. Nevertheless, the discussion about sustainability in the past was driven too much on these environmental topics, and now we have to get to a holistic view on tourism. How can we have a more or a better view also on social and the economical part, because this gives us also the money and let's say the support in the businesses really to make change to support the sustainable development. I talked about the operating model before. What is an operating model? Probably these are only ideas, because here in the room are the highest competencies. Some of you I know from last year, and probably you have much better ideas than me, and you have your own experience, but probably it's a good way when we collect our ideas And this is also a huge chance. I would like to talk about this operating model on purpose. I don't call it a sustainability strategy. Every company needs a sustainability strategy to deal with their specific challenges. But to be real successful, you need not only a sustainability strategy, but also embedded sustainability in your business. And this means sustainability through the business. Also, when we look at the past, sustainability sometimes was, well, it was a department, and the one or the other company has rated it in a different way, but sustainability should be implemented in part of all, in all business lines, in all businesses. That's how we are doing this in TUI, and we are doing this since a long time. And for a discussion on sustainability, this means the operating model is the approach that we should take as the industry, and to drive sustainability debates also with our stakeholders, with our peers, because you all have to convince your partners when you're working in a project. You have probably to convince your finance department on the one hand, you have to convince unions, you have to convince your stakeholders, and also in a public debate, as we are all doing, we have also the dialogue, and especially when you're in politics, you have the dialogue with your voters, with the people, with the local neighborhoods, because it's their country, and they have to give a framework, and politicians, well, are elected for a period of time, and after this time, there will be again an election, and people will give their vote, whether you've done it in the right way or the other way. And therefore, I'm very much convinced that we should have this debate. You need this debate in an environment like a company, because also, from my view, probably sustainability is on the highest point. Today, after we have started our process with the agenda, with the People, Planet, Progress agenda for TUI, where we have involved all the departments, all the business units. All the business units have got targets, but we have not said from the top, this is your target. This has been developed together with a consultancy. So we looked really deeply in the numbers 2019, and then there has been developed roadmaps and paths which is possible, and scenarios. Some scenarios will work, others will not work probably. When you think on the topic of sustainable aviation fuel, I think there's a high discussion in Brussels and in all member states and in all companies, because, well, it is possible to produce, it is quite expensive, but it's not enough at the moment, so nobody can get enough sustainable aviation fuel. This might be a topic in 1 or 2 or 3 years where we will discuss, can we reach all targets in this way, or what has to be achieved in the next level that we get the targets done. I'm convinced that we have every reason to be out and proud about the impact of tourism, and that we should use this when we talk about the sustainable tourism. One is employment. As of 2023, tourism directly supports about 100 million jobs worldwide. And when indirect and inducted effects are included, the impact over 300 million jobs. Over 300 million jobs in the world have a relation to tourism. This accounts for roughly 10% of the global workforce. 10% of the global workforce is related to tourism. The economic impact, many destinations, particularly small islands, nations, and developing economies, heavily rely on tourism for economic stability. In some countries, tourism contributes over 50% of GDP, which ties local livelihoods directly to tourism demand. And when you look on education and everything, which is also on investments in environment, it is related to growth and wealth, which has been started by tourism. And also as a German, you know, I'm from Germany, when I listen to some of the debates, sometimes I believe people do not know what is going on in countries. They have no, let's say, manufacturing, no national goods. There are countries in the world, they have a wonderful nature, they have wonderful people. People, they like to do service in the hotel industry, in the restaurant industry, but they have no national goods, and they have no car manufacturing. So we, as you know, the Germans have been quite dependent on cars. Probably also we are getting a little bit in trouble at the moment with this focus on one industry. But I think we should really have in mind that tourism is a motor, is a job motor, and it's a motor for education and giving young people or the next generation access. I'm also a huge fan, a big fan, when you think on academies with our TK Foundation. We will come later on this. On the one hand, you have the junior academies where you train young people. Then you start the academy where young people get, let's say, vocational training, vocational education. And then there is a group of people, they do their jobs, they start their job, but they want to become an entrepreneur. And there is, in this industry like tourism, it's such a fantastic ecosystem, because you have, yes, you have the big ones, probably some say TUI is a big one, so you have the big ones, but you have hub and spoke. You have a lot of small businesses, local businesses, and there is so much room for entrepreneurs. And when you behave in a fair way and when you develop in a fair way, then I think there's so much opportunities in all places in the world. Something what is for me very important is everything on cultural exchange and awareness. I was working for the German president in the 19th, and the president talked at that time about dialogue of cultures. And he meant dialogue of cultures, religions, and countries and states. This was a discussion which was a little bit, for some, a little bit sophisticated, also for journalists. It was quite difficult to attract them for this topic, because you have to add at that time a lot of explanation why it is important and so on. Today we are seeing what is going on in the world. It's a really challenging world for politicians, but for all of us, and it's a challenging world where we discuss about systems, system of freedom and another system. And therefore, tourism, open minds, tourism, open your heart, open your soul. I think everybody who is traveling is a fantastic ambassador for countries, for nations, for cultures, and probably it helps also to understand differences, because that's quite important. If you understand, or if you know about the difference between you and another person, if you know about why people behave different, then you don't see this, let's say, as a threat for yourself. Probably you have a better understanding, and you will accept, you will respect, which is probably the key word. Social infrastructure, I mentioned before, in many cases, the demand from tourists for services like healthcare, education, public amenities leads to improvement also of the local infrastructure. This is, I think, very important. But when I come back later to the topics on Mallorca, I also know in the other way around, the infrastructure is heavily used by the tourists, and this is probably a challenge for the politicians, and we have to work together on this. So when I look on building blocks, the recent protests on the Canary Islands or Balearic Islands, as I said before, there were no demonstrations against tourism, but demonstrations for more responsible tourism, more inclusive tourism, and probably respect for the livelihoods and for the cultural heritage, for the local heritage of local people. Water usage, energy prices, the question of available housing. I will not call it apartment, because in my speech it is apartment, but this is a wrong word. I think apartment is a heavy discussion, I would say, because then we enter the real estate topic, which is one of the problems in the housing situation on the islands and the Canaries and the Balearics, that apartments are used in a different way than it was planned, so they're used for tourists, probably sold on platforms in a not regulated way, or in a regulated way, but people do not follow the regulation, you could also say at some point, which makes it also again difficult for the government and for public administration to find solution. Of course, this all means we need to understand much better what destinations want from us, because you see this affordable living space. This was a learning from our meeting here with the local communities, local identity, local culture and habitats, also that people the tourists do not enter the areas, the local neighborhoods. I learned when I was on the Canaries, this was not on the Balearics, they said, well, in the past we had our local neighborhood, there was our local cafes, restaurants, we could buy our coffee, we had our coffee where we meet our friends and neighbors, and this was a coffee which was affordable. This was the €1, the €1.50. Now we have to pay the tourist prices. Yeah, we have to pay 3, 4, 5. And that gives not acceptance. And I understand this, and that's why it's so important to work on this. And on this topic, we are working together. Transport infrastructure was also a learning for me when I met the initiatives and institutions here on Mallorca, because I heard the traffic has so much increased over the last years. This is on the one hand the tourists, but on the other, as I understood also, a lot of people from mainland have moved to the Balearics and to Mallorca, so you have much more residents on the island, and now we have to find, again, balance, and balance could mean more public service. I read in the papers there will come a train between the airport and I think Llucmajor and other places, and this is, I think, a good start, but I think you can feel it in the mindset of the politicians really to talk about this and also to handle it and to start with the initiatives. I know if you want to construct a trainway or railway, it will need probably some years. Probably it's faster here than in Germany. But I learned about 2028 or 2032 it could happen. I'm not sure, but you will know this better. But I think the good thing is the initiatives are done. The ideas are on the table. It's now for discussion, and that's, I think, a good start. One other point is social sustainability is key in building trust and mutual understanding. So we always said social sustainability is more than the S in ESG. You know, all this ESG, which is part of the regulation, which is part of the reporting, which is part of your businesses. The World Bank explains social sustainability is crucial for achieving broader development outcomes, such as reducing poverty, inequality, by ensuring that communities are empowered, included, and resilient. Resilient was also a word I heard before. It was also part of the debate with the United Nations. It was a very early debate. I think it was in 2022 when we met in New York. It was about having a more sustainable and more resilient tourism industry for the future. And Doris and Dirk, you have been at that time, and all the team of United Nations Tourism, you have worked on this, and I think that's exactly what we need. As an industry, we should promote that social sustainability is our biggest asset as an industry we bring to the table and to the discussion, because tourism is a people business, because we are in the business of enabling dialogue between cultures. And I mentioned before the work of TUI Care Foundation. My colleague Alexander Panchuk is also here in the room. He is the executive director of the TUI Care Foundation. And the results, when I see on our work, and all the others are doing fantastic work in these areas. We have more than 70 projects in 25 regions. 400,000 young people have got environmental education programs or this vocal education. More than 7,000 entrepreneurs have been supported, and more than 90,000 young women have been in our mentoring programs. And this is also a great achievement in a lot of countries. I think on Jordan, I think on Tunisia, I think on Egypt, especially in developing countries, in least and less developed countries, there is a lot of potential, but also a lot have been done. And this is really something we can bring as an industry, we all together can bring to the table. I mentioned before local housing, respect for local living spaces. We are guests. Living spaces means understanding and acknowledging that tourism does not happen in an isolated space, but it is part of a local environment, of a local fabric. Tourism impacts local communities. Tourism interacts with the daily lives of local residents, influences their culture, their economy, their environment. Tourists use the same spaces as locals, restaurants, markets, and public transportation, which means tourism is inherently embedded in the local environment and fabric rather than existing in isolation. And that's something I was invited in the German Bundestag in a debate, in a hearing, and next to me was the director of a region in Germany in the Alps, in the mountains, southern Germany. And he always said, we do not any longer talk about tourism strategy, our tourism strategy, because tourism and guests are living in the same space. The one are here for longer or forever, the local neighborhood, and others are here for some weeks, but they come back every year probably, and we are talking more about a living space or a room where people and tourists, local people and tourists come together. And that's the way how we want to find a dialogue between our local neighborhoods and, well, everybody who is involved in the tourism industry, from business or whatever. And, well, when you are two invited for a hearing, you're probably following more what the other is saying. It was a very small region in Germany, but I was quite impressed by this way, talking not about an isolated tourism strategy, but an integrated, holistic approach that how tourism and local neighborhoods can work together more closely. Cultural exchange, I mentioned authenticity. Tourists often seek authentic experiences which involve engaging with local culture, tradition, and communities. Understanding tourism as part of the local fabric fosters richer cultural exchanges and helps to protect also the local heritage and leading to more sustainable tourism practice. And the word and also how we behave, for me it's most important, it's about respect. Respect, on the one hand, the opinion of the other, and on the other hand, respect the local heritage, the local neighborhood, and the way people want to have their country develop. As I said before, the locals have to decide how they want to develop the tourism and what is the future of tourism on an island, whether it's in Spain, in Greece, or wherever in the world. Tourism plays an important role as an economic factor, I mentioned before, and employer, especially in many southern European countries. The numbers have been impressive. Last year, tourism in Spain accounted for 12.8% of gross domestic product, and it will increase for this year. The package holiday is a key pillar, and it's very, very important that we maximize the economic growth by respecting local resources. And I think especially the package holiday is key because so many local people benefit from it. You have the employers and employees, you have the hotels, you have the, let's say, construction businesses, but you have also the way how you manage your tourism in the destination. Then it's much more organized, and that's, I think, the topic when we talk about the islands. In a lot of islands, you have this way of individual tourists coming to their homes or renting a home on a platform, and later they're using cars, so they have all individual traffic. It's different to, I would say, if people are coming with an aircraft, there will be a coach, they will be brought to a touristic area, to 1, 2, 3 hotels. The hotels have been developed, especially for hosting tourists. This was the idea when an area was designed for the tourism sector at some point. And I think that's quite important that we understand that the way how the package tourism, and probably in some years ago, I know my friends, they always said, oh, I'm so individual, I do everything myself. I book a flight, I book a hotel, I do everything myself, I have a rental car. It was quite sexy to be so individual. And probably our business and the package travel and like hotels have done it, have been a little bit boring for some, for this very fancy people, yeah? And this has changed, I think. First, after pandemic, due to pandemic, people look much more on a secure environment so that they have people they can trust on, they can help if there is a problem. I had a lot of calls in March 2020 where people gave me a call and said, well, I'm in Mexico, I need to come back to Europe, can you help me? And I said, well, you have a package travel. We are responsible for, no, I have not a package travel. I booked the flight individually. Oh, I said, well, then it will be more challenging, but there was, in Germany, there was the Foreign Office, they brought people back, but they sent later also the bill for this, yeah, so you had to pay for it. So I think there is a new understanding that probably our way of tourism, this organized tourism, it's much more modern than people believe. I always call it a little bit like a concierge in a hotel, yeah. You can ask him for everything, him or her for everything. You get the support. You will get service, and it's more security. It's more service in this package holiday, and I believe strongly it benefits much more for the local people because of the environment, because of that you coordinate, that you can streamline, that people will not go all individually by rental cars through the cities, and on the other hand, that you use hotels which have been constructed for this kind of tourism, which follow the legislation, which follows the regulation, which follows probably also the tax regulation. That is, as I understand from the papers, I only read this. This is probably also not in all cases in other kind of business the same if you rent apartments. So tourism needs to be part of the solution, as I said before, and you can see 3 pictures, and probably here should have been Mallorca, not Spain. It was Mallorca. So it was a meeting with the partners from the tourism industry, the minister, Maria, a lot of friends are here, Susanna, and we had a fantastic discussion about the different views, what kind of tourism, how much tourism, what are also the approaches of the protesters. We had before a meeting with the protesters, with groups of the civil society, and I had also the privilege to talk about one person of Fridays for Future, because this was also quite important to... he was here, perfect. So I was demonstrating. Okay. But I think it's good to know all arguments. It's always good to know the arguments, to follow the arguments, and then you have probably the better ground for a fair discussion, and you can offer something. And I said before, my learning was from all these meetings, nobody said we are against tourists. We want to have a different way of tourism, and we have to design the tourism, the way of tourism in a new way. And that's probably what I say. The industry, the partners of the industry, also us as a company, that's why we have been so interested. I learned about a meeting in Germany, one of the German tourism associations. They have also done a roundtable in Germany. And Susanna and me, we had the privilege last week to be on stage in Berlin on a conference. And I said, well, probably it's okay that you do such a roundtable in Germany where representatives of German associations sitting around at the table, and you have the representatives probably of the Spanish and the Greek tourism organizations, but they are all in Germany. They are not here. And it's completely different. And that's why it was for us so important to have the direct contact. And we want to continue this. And I'm very happy also that the Forum of the Civil Society has accepted and has invited us for a next meeting, so that we also can try to contribute. I want to be honest, I cannot say or cannot promise that we will contribute, but we want to contribute and to give our arguments and probably also to learn what we can do better. And I learned a lot of things in this meeting. I learned that hotels are asked to buy 3%, nearly 3%, I think, local products. My first impression was, this can be not rocket science, yeah, to buy 3% local products. So now it's on us to investigate. Are we doing this? How we can do this better? What is the next step? And probably it's also in our interest to use local products, because the guests want to have an authentic holiday. And at other places in the world, this is not needed in Spain or in Mallorca, but when I look on Cabo Verde, on Sal, you know, in Sal is a lot of sand. It's a wonderful country, it's a wonderful island, it's sun, beach, but it's a lot of sand. So there is no fruits, no vegetables. So we have done this with TUI Care Foundation. So we have started to develop a project, Field to Fork, and we have worked together with local communities, with a local NGO, and now we have a farm where we produce vegetables and fruits which are delivered to the hotels, but on the other hand, they are also on the market for the local neighbors, for the local people. So this is not needed here. It's a completely different approach. It only shows if you talk with each other, if you understand the needs, then you can find a solution, or you can first try to do something. I was not sure whether we will be successful, but this is also completely okay. It's about trial and error. You will make mistakes, and then you will have the next step, and then you try it again, and later third time it will work at some point. And this is something we want now also to roll out to other places in the world. So I strongly believe this interaction. Yes, I'm always a bit too long. How much? 5 minutes?
Just 10 minutes.
Okay, good. I will come to an end, no problem. So Turkey and the same with Greece, but I was very impressed about what has been done on the Balearics. Also this dialogue which has been started by the government with the working groups that there have been now, well, the headlines for, I think, 14 working groups where the local initiatives are all involved, and also this online dialogue which has been started where the local people can participate. This will get all into the process. To be honest, I learned this here. I have not read this in the papers. I read and saw in TV about demonstrations and people against tourism, but I learned about this quite fantastic open dialogue here, and I was surprised that also some of the people in the room said, this kind of dialogue we asked for the last 10 years, and we didn't get it. This kind of dialogue between governments, industry, hotel associations, restaurant associations, and the industry partners like us. And I only can promise we are very open for this, because we believe that is the right way to find solutions in an environment where we are all partners. Well, you host us, you welcome us, but we are partners, and that's why I believe we have also to deliver our piece to make the tourism successful, and on the other hand, also to get the acceptance out of it. I will come to an end. I said before, we should we should be proud, and we should talk with pride about this sector, about this tourism industry, because the numbers I shared before, wealth, education, working opportunities. We should focus more on really the positive side, but we should not underestimate it. It's now a little bit small in my presentations. It's a little bigger. We know the challenges. We have a lot of positive impact, but there are challenges, and we accept these challenges. That these challenges I will say most of the companies, well, have in their homework and in their agenda. That's why I say we have an agenda, a sustainability agenda, which is certified by SBTi, so Sustainable Science-Based Target Initiative, with numbers for 2030, not 2050. Yeah, because 2050, let's be fair, 2050, well, I'm young, but I will be retired in 2050, and I can promise everything. And that's also something, if you want to convince people in a company, also your colleagues, because they have to handle this all the day. They have to deal with topics all the day. When I promise things for 2050, they will say, oh yeah, you're a nice guy, but it's okay. So that's why we said we need really 2030 as a target, as a mid-term target, so that everybody also understands how he or she can contribute and what's the contribution for the daily work. But in the public, I believe this industry is doing great things, and if you think how the changes have been in the aviation industry, the modern aircraft, okay, there are now some problems on the one hand with Airbus, and the other side with Boeing. With deliveries, we get not enough of it, but the new aircraft are much more efficient, so we have a lower footprint. When you look on everything which has been developed in the cruise business, which is coming, so the boats are, most of them will get at some point green methanol probably. We will get the green methanol very soon, and the Mein Schiff 7. There are a lot of initiatives which have taken place. When you see everything in the hotel business, solar panel, there we are coming back to the new times and old regulations. I have to deal with countries where you're only allowed to use 20% of the solar energy you produce on the roof of your hotel. And the other energy has to come to the public grid. Probably it's not the best incentive for somebody to invest in solar panel on the roof when you cannot use it for your own need in your hotel. Yeah, that's something which is on the, let's say, negative side. On the positive side, let's have a look to Turkey. In Turkey, we are now operating 3 solar parks, photovoltaic parks, and there will come another 3. This is 100 kilometers away from Antalya. So we got the land from the government in the mountains, we constructed the solar parks, and we can use this energy in Antalya and in Bodrum with a very small fee. In most of the countries, also in Germany, you produce energy, you have to sell it for a low price, and then you buy it back, but for a much higher price. They have done it in a, I would say, very competitive way. So you do the investment, you can produce, and then you get it out for only a small fee at another place. But not all countries are on this level now, have not decided in this ways, but that's something we can learn from each other. That's, for me, so important when I'm in different countries to understand what is the best practice in this country and how can things be transferred or not. Not everything can be transferred. So coming to an end, I think we should be self-confident as an industry that we can achieve much more, that we are a fantastic employer with this industry, that we bring especially also to least and less developed countries wealth and also opportunities for people. Local participation is key. And for the future, well, I wish for myself and for all of us that this growth industry will have a fantastic place also in the reputation, getting more attention in the public sector, in also media. And sometimes it's underestimated what people are doing, how they work in a hotel, what they do on service for the people. I think that's very, very important. And well, the most important thing is respect, talking to each other, having a good dialogue. And when I look to politics, I hope that we get fair and predictable frameworks, fair and predictable regulation, that we come away from over-regulation and over-bureaucracy. I have the feeling, but it's only a feeling, it's out of the belly, it's not with arguments, that also the European Union has understood that the new Commission should have another approach than the old one. The times are challenging for a lot of countries in Europe. We have recession in Germany, not in all countries, but in some countries. We are in competition between Europe, Asia, the United States. So if we do not, our homework, if you do not start to deregulate in some areas, if you do not start to stop over-bureaucracy in some areas, over-reportings, we have seen this in a number of fields, then it will be difficult in the competitiveness framework, all are operating it. But, well, I trust that this will happen. And on the other hand, I mentioned before the tourism sector, also on the island. You have on the one hand the industry which operates with the package travel, which is in most of the countries since decades. I know that we are in Spain with our fantastic partnership, joint venture with Rio, I think since 60 years, 50, 60 years. This is also in other countries. So we are here in good times, in bad times. We stay, and we are invested, and that is core for most of the companies. They have hotels, they invest in companies, and others, they sell. And both, it's okay. Customers should have choice in everything, but I also believe that we need a level playing field also in European regulation between the package travel, which gives security, where we care for the people, where we care for the customers when they are in the destination, where we use hotels which have been constructed especially for tourism, and let's say the platforms, they offer their space in the internet, and you could put it in your flats, but it's a different business. It's a completely different business, but we should not get over-regulated while the others are not regulated. We need a level playing field for our industry. Thank you very much.